What's going on, ladies and gents? Welcome back to the Makina gaming channel. It's me, your boy Makina, coming to you with another video game review. Today we're going to be talking about Sandfall Interactive's latest installment, Expedition 33. In just a short amount of time, this game managed to take a gaming audience by storm, and the $165 million in revenue that the game has generated is a testament to just how much fire this game truly caught. With raving reviews and high praise, it was hard not to get wrapped up in all the hype. I'm happy to say that after playing the game, I was not left disappointed, but while the game did do a lot of things right, I feel like it lacked execution in some key areas. But before we dive any deeper, as always, I want to thank you guys for tuning in for another video. It's hard to put out as many reviews as I want without the quality of my video suffering, so I'd rather focus on the quality of my videos rather than the quantity. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the content so far. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and now, here are my thoughts on Expedition 33. Check it out. Behind every new game, there's an ambitious developer that is hoping to have a hit, and that's exactly what Sandfall Interactive has with Expedition 33. Sandfall Interactive really developed something unique with this game and delivered an almost complete package. Now, even though I can easily say that I enjoyed my experience with this game, there were some areas, like I mentioned earlier, that did lack some execution. But rather than start with the constructive criticism, let's start with what the game does exceptionally well. For starters, Expedition 33 is proof that you can make a great game without having to give in to corporate greed. The game features a cast of characters that are all easy to fall in love with, each boasting emotion and depth. It starts with a super strong opening that piques your curiosity and demands answers. I was immediately hooked after playing the opening and wanted to know what was going on and where the story was going to go from there. As the game continued, the story got more and more complicated, but in a good way. The whole premise of the game is centered around people going on annual expeditions in hopes of one day being able to stop the yearly cycle that causes people of certain ages to disappear. The Gamage is what the game calls this yearly event, and every year someone known as the Paintress writes a number on a faraway continent, visible for all to see. Once that number is written on the monolith, people have exactly 1 year before they're erased from existence forever. Oh, and just to add a little bit more dread to the situation, every year the number decreases. This brings us to this year's expedition, Expedition 33, an uncanny group setting out to try to stop the yearly curse and to destroy the Paintress. There's a sense of real urgency throughout the whole story, and while it may sound simple on paper, as you begin to unravel this universe's biggest mysteries, you'll find yourself on the edge of your seat waiting for what seems to be the inevitable outcome. Having a good concept to a story is only half of the equation though. What really elevates this story to the next plateau is the actual storytelling. In a game like this, you got to be able to deliver that story through the world, its characters, and dialogue. There's a real art to it, and this game has an almost cinematic approach to it all. It's rich with cutscenes, contains excellent dialogue between characters, and has good character development. Some of the best characters in video games are the ones that you're able to connect with and that feel like they have a certain realness about them. That's what you get with Expedition 33. The game does a great job of balancing real emotion with tension, and it never lets up. As you progress through the story, you can actually feel the desperation in the characters as they're faced with what seems to be a truly hopeless situation. But you also feel a sense of pride in knowing you continue pressing on for those who come after. Now, almost immediately after you set off, the game ramps up the action and introduces one of the game's main antagonists, Renoir. Without going into too many spoilers, I'd like to take the time to just really acknowledge how well this character is played. While his motives remain unclear in the beginning, he quickly turned into one of the more memorable antagonists in recent gaming history. And he wasn't the only character that was pretty memorable in this game either. See, a lot of RPGs have characters that can sometimes feel like an afterthought, but Sandfall Interactive really took their time with each character. Gustav, for example, is a resourceful engineer dedicated to stopping the painters and protecting those he loves. Mayel is like the little sister of the group who's way too young to be setting out on an expedition, which adds another element to her relationship with the other characters. Lune has dedicated her life to honoring her parents by learning who and just what the paintress is. And Ciel, she's a former farmer who lost her husband in the Gamage, and she's also another key member of the group. There's a couple more characters that the game introduces, but for the sake of keeping spoilers to a minimum, I'll let you guys learn about them on your own. Relationships that are reinforced through shared pain and suffering are usually some of the strongest, and in this game that isn't an exception. You can tell that this game really wanted to personify the bond between characters, and it's really appreciated. The dialogue between characters was believable, and the voice acting was excellent. Each character delivered their lines with a certain gusto that made everything sound pretty convincing. But to me, what really set this game apart was the beautiful symphony of sounds that were very eloquently paired with the dialogue. Lorianne Testard and Alice Duport, I really hope I'm saying that right, were able to deliver one of the most harmonious soundtracks that I've ever heard in any video game before. I mean, we're talking about Mick Gordon status here. And for those of you who don't know, Mick Gordon is the genius behind Doom Eternal's legendary soundtrack. Every single song paired perfectly with the cutscenes and with what was going on in the game. They were able to invoke so much emotion with the soundtrack. Every key, every chord, the dynamics, the vocals, the instruments, everything was perfect. So much so that while playing the game, I even found myself tearing up in certain sections. Every soundtrack really appealed to the musician in me, but anyone can just as easily be immersed in the world through its orchestration. Kudos to Sandfall Interactive for taking the time to really incorporate some truly beautiful soundtracks in this game. Now, even though I mentioned quite a few things that the game does right, there was still a good amount of room for improvement. While seeing the characters perform on screen, for example, I couldn't help but notice that limb synchronization could have used some major improvement, along with facial cues and facial expressions. This is something that some people could have maybe overlooked, but I have to say that in certain sections it was pretty egregious. What they were saying was never the problem, it was just how they looked while they were saying it, and that sometimes ruined the immersion for me. Better facial expressions and cues could have made the acting that much more believable. Now, pacing is something that at times these types of games do struggle with, but in this game it's actually something that it should be applauded for. If you've played RPGs in the past, you know that they can sometimes add a ton of unnecessary content, but this game doesn't stray too far from the path. There's still a good amount of side content to take advantage of, but it never feels like it's in the way or like it's the game's main focus. Full transparency, usually when I'm playing these types of RPGs, I do try to complete everything I can, but I really didn't this time around. Mostly because of time, but also because I didn't want to stop playing the amazing story and ruin the immersion. Doing a main quest and then going to explore the world for hours would have made the story a little less appealing to me and might have possibly made it harder for me to track. That is one more thing that you should know. This story is not cut and dry by any means, and if you aren't paying attention or you skip a cutscene or two, it'll throw the whole thing off, so bear that in mind while playing the game. Now, for my gamers out there that like to explore every nook and cranny of a game, I have to say that the exploration could have also been integrated a bit better into the game. As far as I can tell, there were minimal icons on the map, a map which, by the way, was only accessible when you were traveling in a sub-area known as the Overworld, which connected different parts of the continent and gave you access to various different levels. This can especially be frustrating because it's almost as though the game is encouraging players to explore, but really gives them no sense of direction. There are plenty of times where I find myself going in the wrong direction, so a mini-map to at least know where I was going would have really been appreciated. I also have to comment on the fact that even while exploring, a lot of the loot or a lot of the items that you did find weren't as rewarding as you might think. Most of them were just items that you used to upgrade your weapons, for example. But other than that, there was never really a find where I was completely taken aback by it. So yeah, just keep that in mind. That's for all the gamers out there that like to explore and like to make sure that they don't miss anything. In a universe like this, there's not much separating this expedition from ending up like every other single expedition that came before. Walking that fine line in an unknown world filled with perceivable danger at every turn adds a certain level of tension when engaging enemies in the world. Most battles in Expedition 33 were all pretty distinct from one another, and enemies in each section felt varied and all presented their own challenge. There's a good variety of bosses as well, but for me personally, what threw me off a bit here were the different character models. I get that the game was supposed to be a little quirky and out there, but some of the character models just looked a bit weird to me. I think they could have made better enemy design choices, and they could have made them look a bit more menacing and a little less cartoony. Now, the actual battles themselves were fun, especially some of the bigger multi-phase battles that you play through. In fact, these are what I had the most fun with. The multi-phase battles were a nice change of pace overall and were, in my opinion, really well designed. It was nice to see that the game developers found a way to not make these battles feel so stagnant. In a lot of them, landscapes would shift, enemy attacks would change, and the overall intensity would ramp up. These battles provided really cool visuals as well, but I do have to say that I did experience some frame drops during some of them, and I do feel like the overall graphics could have been just a bit better. Not just during these battles, but throughout the whole game. The devil is in the details, as the old adage goes, and I just feel like this game could have benefited from a boost in texture, lighting, and animations. Granted, I really didn't mess around with the settings to see if I could have improved this, and I don't play on a super powered PC, so your experience may be completely different than mine, but overall, I just feel like in some sections, there was a slight decline in quality. Also, while playing through the game, at some point you may start to feel like some of the battles are a bit repetitive. On your way to an objective or while getting through a certain section, you may find yourself facing the same, if not similar enemies over and over again. This obviously at some point can get tiresome, but the game does allow you to get through certain sections without being forced into enemy battles. At a certain point, I actually found myself running right past the enemies to just get on with the objective. Now, another glaring area of opportunity in this game for me was in the customization. There's no real way to add that personal touch to any of your characters, and the very little that you did unlock along the way really didn't elevate the game in any way to me. Weapon perks were already predetermined, so there was no real weapon customization, and weapon skins were pretty minimal. There was a way to upgrade weapons through something called chroma catalysts, but it never really felt like the upgrades made a significant impact during combat. Instead, the real highlight of the combat in this game comes from your different weapon skills. Each character can have up to 6 skills equipped, and each one of those skills provides their own set of advantages. Things like a boost in attack power, healing, and status buffs were all available. And the quicker you learn how to pair these skills with your selected party members, the better the results would be in battle. Eventually, you'll even unlock something called gradient attacks, which are supposed to be your ace in the hole. It's basically like an ultimate attack that's supposed to change the tides of battle. To me, however, they didn't really feel all that powerful. At times, I'd even find myself doing more damage with my regular weapon skills than with my gradient attacks. Don't get me wrong though, some were strong, but not all felt like an ultimate attack, you know what I mean? Also, besides team counters, there were no team attacks, which was a huge miss in my opinion, especially when considering the fact that you're playing through the game as a team. It would have been awesome to have seen them take a page out of Final Fantasy Rebirth's book, and if they would have added synchronized team attacks and abilities. What they did do right, however, was give the player the ability to parry and dodge in real time while in battle. I personally think this adds great value to the combat because even though it's a turn-based RPG, players still have a bit more control over the outcome of battles. Timing is key, and being able to discern when a parry or dodge is paramount to your battle progression. The game also introduces something called gradient counters later on in the game, which is another parry mechanic that relies on timing and recognition of certain enemy attacks. These counters, along with the regular parrying and dodging that the game allows you to do during battle, truly enhance the gameplay and makes things feel way less redundant. Besides the certain misses in the gameplay, I also feel like the game's core RPG systems could have used some improvement. I just feel like what the game gave you was a bit disorganized and felt a little more like an afterthought. I feel like they could have integrated these systems into the game a bit better and made for an overall smoother experience. For it to be an RPG game, it also felt pretty bare bones. There were only 5 main attributes to improve and nothing more. The active skills known as pictos in this game did add some level of strategy to your character build, but as you progress through the game, you'll notice that your choices on who gets what skill doesn't bear as much weight. See, when you equip an active skill to a character, after winning a certain amount of battles, you'll unlock a passive skill that's tied to that active skill. You can then add Lumina points to each character slot, which you'll find by progressing through the game. This then, in turn, allows you to equip a passive skill to your character. The problem is that that same passive skill is already an active skill with another one of your characters. Look, I know it's confusing, but all I'm trying to say is that you can have multiple characters with the same skills, and to me, that defeats the purpose of having a character build in the first place. Isn't the point to make each character feel unique in their own way? If you have all your characters, like in my case, have all the same abilities, then the individual characters feel a little less unique. There were also a lack of items that you can use in battle too, and out of the 3 items that you did get to use, I only really found myself using 2. And that brings us to the inevitable conclusion of this review. Now let me start off by saying that I genuinely feel like Sandfall Interactive really poured their heart into this game, and that's what we need more of in the gaming community. People with a true passion for gaming that aren't afraid to take risks and be creative. They were able to put together a game that deserved the hype, a game that sets a great precedent moving forward, and a game that I personally really enjoyed playing overall. Some areas of the game were a bit lacking, but as a total package, they did a great job. Story-driven games aren't for everyone, and there are some out there that might not enjoy the prolonged cutscenes and all the dialogue, but for someone like me who enjoys creative narratives, the game was awesome. There was a slight decline in quality here and there, systems could have been better integrated, exploration could have used a little bit of work, and they could have added something like maybe a bestiary to give us more intel on some of the enemies that we were facing. I also didn't mention this earlier, but I feel like the ending was just a bit lackluster for me. I get what they were going for, but all in all, I feel like it could have been better executed. Regardless, the pros definitely outweigh the cons with this one, and I truly believe that if you like games with strong narratives, this is one that you should give a try. For those reasons, Expedition 33 gets a 9 out of 10. It's a game worth playing, and it's a game that you should go out and support. I truly can't wait to see what's next for the studio. They definitely made a fan out of me, and I truly enjoyed the game and think that you will too. Hopefully when they do come out with their next game, it's only that much better. There you have it, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. I appreciate all the support. Sorry this one took me a while, but hopefully you guys are enjoying the content that I am uploading. Continue to help me grow this thing, and as always, be on the lookout for another video from your boy, Makina. Thanks, guys. See you on the next one.